As usual, I returned from California on the red-eye, feeling utterly exhausted as I pulled onto our street around 8 a.m. on Sunday. To my surprise, Sheila's car was parked in front of the house. Sheila was Lori's closest friend, but not someone I particularly liked. To put it frankly, Sheila had a reputation for promiscuity, an attractive woman, but known for her loose behavior. I always had reservations about Lori spending too much time with her. Sheila was divorced after being caught cheating on her husband, and she frequented bars and clubs, constantly making new acquaintances. Entering the house, I found the kitchen deserted and headed straight upstairs. I was taken aback to find my wife in bed, with Sheila sitting beside her. "Hey, sweetie," Lori greeted weakly. "How was your trip?" She looked weary and unwell. "Are you feeling all right, honey?" I asked, leaning in to give her a kiss. "Don't come too close," Lori warned, weakly raising a hand to keep me at bay. "I've come down with a nasty flu or something, that's why Sheila's here." Sheila smiled at me, subtly accentuating her curves. I often wondered if she was even aware of her actions. "Hey, Todd," Sheila greeted. "Lori and I spent part of the evening at Monroe's, but she started feeling really sick, so I brought her back here. She seemed feverish and threw up a few times, so I stayed over to make sure she'd be all right until you returned." "Thanks, Sheila, I appreciate it," I replied. "Would you like some coffee or breakfast?" "No, thanks, I've already had some coffee," Sheila declined. "Lori just spoke to the doctor. He can see her in about half an hour, and I'll drive her there." I started to offer to take her, but Lori insisted that Sheila could handle it. "You need to rest, baby. I know you've been up for more than 24 hours. We agreed that I would sleep in the guest room for a couple of days to avoid catching whatever Lori had. 10 minutes later, I watched as Sheila assisted Lori to her car. To my surprise, Sheila drove off towards Markham Avenue, even though Lori's doctor was in the opposite direction, towards the town center. However, I was too fatigued to dwell on it. I crawled into bed and fell asleep within minutes. For the following week, I played the role of a supportive husband from a distance. According to Lori, Dr. Simon diagnosed her with a flu-like illness, nothing too serious, but advised me to avoid close contact for at least 5 days. So I contacted Lori's workplace to inform them of her absence, prepared meals for her, cleaned the house, did the laundry, and spent evenings with her in the bedroom, watching TV from a chair while she rested in bed. However, our physical intimacy remained limited to a distance of at least 10 feet, and by the weekend, my desire for Lori was stronger than ever. We typically engaged in sexual activity at least twice a week on average, and with my recent trip to California, I had gone 12 days without experiencing her affectionate gestures. By Friday, Lori was feeling better, able to take care of herself and resume household chores. When I arrived home that evening with a bouquet of roses, I was met with a warm hug and kiss from my cheerful wife. Eagerly, I expressed my desire for dessert, but to my disappointment, Lori informed me that her period had just started that afternoon. Disappointed but understanding, I resolved to be patient and demonstrate my understanding. We spent the weekend together, watching movies, taking leisurely walks, and cuddling in bed each evening. By the following Tuesday, I hoped for a change in fortune. I left work early to prepare a nice dinner for Lori, only to find 2 unexpected surprises: voicemail messages. The first message was from Lori, explaining that she would be working late due to a sudden inventory issue at the store. The second message, however, was from Lori's gynecologist's office, reminding her of an appointment the next morning to remove her stitches. Confused and concerned, I contemplated calling Lori but decided against it, assuming she was busy at work. After a dinner of leftovers and a few beers, I relaxed by watching baseball and eventually went to bed around 10 p.m. I was awoken later by the sensation of warm lips around my genitals. Initially enjoying the sensation, I eventually felt the need to turn on the bedside light, only to discover that the person pleasuring me was not Lori, but Sheila, much to my surprise and astonishment. The sudden light startled her, but she continued to advance towards me, naked and determined, urging my arousal with her hand. Despite her enticing appearance, I pushed her away, refusing to betray Lori by indulging in a moment of weakness with her friend. "I've always desired you, Todd," Sheila murmured, attempting to coax me into succumbing to temptation. Lori won't find out, just this once. Are you out of your mind? I exclaimed, jumping out of bed, my resolve to remain faithful to Lori unwavering. I won't betray Lori with you, Sheila. Please, Todd, I'll make you feel amazing, she pleaded, clinging to me and enticing me with her body. Although tempted, I knew that fidelity was crucial in our relationship. Frustrated and aroused, I firmly rejected Sheila's advances, insisting that she get dressed and leave immediately. Fuming with anger, I escorted Sheila to the bathroom, urging her to dress quickly. Ignoring her protests, I tossed her clothes inside and threatened to escort her out to her car if she didn't comply. As Sheila drove away, I returned upstairs to bed, contemplating how she had managed to enter the house and reflecting on her provocative behavior. Despite my irritation, I couldn't help but acknowledge her physical allure, which only complicated the situation. Just as I was drifting back to sleep, the room illuminated once again, and I heard Lori's enraged voice piercing the silence. You deceitful bastard! How could you, oh? Startled, I turned to face her, perplexed by her accusation. Lori, what's happening? Why are you yelling at me? Flushed with embarrassment, she stammered, struggling to articulate her thoughts. Todd, I'm sorry, I thought you were, She hesitated, unable to complete her sentence. Sensing her discomfort, I remained patient, waiting for her to explain. Some girls at work were gossiping, and I got the idea that maybe you were cheating on me, she confessed, meeting my gaze tentatively. Suppressing my frustration, I reassured her, Lori, that's absurd. You know I would never betray you like that. Besides, I didn't even know you would be working late tonight until this afternoon. What did you think I would do, go to a bar and find someone else? That's insane. She shook her head, offering apologies repeatedly, but I remained skeptical. Eventually, I asserted, okay, fine. There's something going on here that you're not telling me about. I'll find somewhere else to stay until you're ready to tell me the truth. Despite her tears and protests, I hastily packed some clothes and grabbed a suitcase from the closet. I didn't have a concrete plan beyond finding a motel for a couple of days, but after all the recent surprises, I refused to continue playing the role of the clueless husband. As I made my way towards the front door, Lori pleaded through sobs, Wait. Please, Todd, okay, I'll tell you. I halted and insisted, all of it, Lori, the whole truth, or I'm leaving. With tearful nods, we retreated to the kitchen and sat down at the table. I thought you would be with another woman tonight because... Lori broke down into tears once more. Because I asked Sheila to come over and seduce you. Baffled, I inquired, why on earth would you do such a ridiculous thing, Lori? Unable to meet my gaze, she confessed, I can't tell you, Todd. I did something awful, and if I tell you, you'll leave me. Please don't divorce me, she pleaded amidst her sobs. Does this have anything to do with the stitches Dr. Mahoney is removing tomorrow? I asked dryly. Lori stared at me in shock before succumbing to another round of inconsolable crying. It took over 10 minutes for her to compose herself enough to speak. It all traced back to Sheila, unsurprisingly, who had been urging Lori for months to let loose, have some fun, and go out with her on one of my business trips. Last Saturday, Lori accompanied her to Monroe's, where they danced, drank, and encountered Sheila's good friends. By midnight, they were all intoxicated, Lori, Sheila, and Sheila's acquaintances, Andy and Martin. Sheila whispered to Lori about Martin having an exceptionally large member, and he took Lori to the spare bedroom and evidently demonstrated it vigorously. And then Lori hesitated. I was already seething with anger and had no patience for beating around the bush. What did he do, Lori? Cowering, she whispered, he made me, get him excited again with my mouth, and then he wanted to what? He made me take it anally. But it was too painful, and he injured me. I screamed and started bleeding all over the bed, and he just panicked and left. Sheila found out and helped me clean up a bit before getting me home. She stayed overnight, and the next morning she took me to Dr. Mahoney, who put in 8 stitches and prescribed antibiotics. He also insisted on testing me for STDs. Thankfully, all the tests came back negative, she recounted, her voice trembling with remorse as she cowered in front of me. And that's it? I asked coldly, leaning back in my chair. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was awful, Todd, the worst experience of my life. I'm so sorry. It was supposed to be just dancing and flirting. I don't know what happened. My fist slammed onto the table, making her flinch. What happened is you decided to sample another man's cock, you disgraceful woman, and a well-endowed one at that. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. And that's why you arranged for Sheila to seduce me in our bed, isn't it? So that when you caught me, you have an excuse for yourself? She nodded silently, avoiding my gaze. Fuming with anger, I stood up. I'm leaving. I'll find somewhere else to stay for a few days. No, please, baby, she pleaded, following me to the front door. I'll never do it again, I swear. I've learned my lesson. I'm sure you have, Lori. But whether you get the chance to never do it again is up to me. Without waiting for a response, I stormed out, slamming the door behind me. That foolish woman. I muttered to myself as I sat in a room at the Best Western, unable to sleep. 8 years of fidelity, and she allows her friend to persuade her into cheating with a stranger? 8 years of refusing anal sex with me, claiming it was disgusting, and then she lets this man violate her? The next morning, after barely 3 hours of sleep, I headed to Sheila's apartment. I pounded on the door until she answered, visibly startled to see me. Ignoring her protests, I barged into her living room and said, "All right, Sheila, we need to talk." Throughout the day, Lori attempted to reach me, but I ignored all her calls and emails. She must have been relieved to find my car in the driveway when she returned home from work. But as she searched the house and called my name, she finally entered our bedroom. "Hello, Lori," I grunted, not pausing my rhythm as I thrust into Sheila. We were in the missionary position, and Sheila was on the brink of orgasm, her moans growing louder. "Oh my God," Lori gasped, frozen in shock. "We'll probably be done in a few minutes," I said, turning my attention back to Sheila. "You can wait downstairs or watch, it's up to you." And with that, I resumed my fervent lovemaking with Sheila until we both reached climax, leaving Lori standing in disbelief. I lay beside Sheila, satisfied and exhausted, my hands gently caressing her breasts. Lori had left the room, but soon returned, tears streaming down her cheeks as she stood in the doorway. "I guess I can't ask how could you, now, can I, Todd?" she said sadly. "No, Lori, you can't," I replied. "You and Sheila orchestrated this plan to manipulate me into sleeping with her, so you could avoid facing the consequences. And I've decided that's a perfect solution to our problem. In a little while, Sheila will be giving me her ass. Turns out she really enjoys it that way." "Sheila!" Lori cried. "I thought you were my friend." "I'm sorry," Sheila said, failing to look apologetic. "But if it weren't for me dragging you to Monroe's, Todd wouldn't be on the brink of divorcing you. He made it clear that this was the only way he'd ever consider forgiving you. And I must say, if the last half hour is any indication, I'm going to enjoy the next few weeks." "Weeks?" Lori exclaimed, staggering backward and collapsing into a chair. "What do you mean?" "It's simple, my dear faithful wife," I explained. "You'll be in the guest room. With your stitches just removed, I know your ass won't be available for a couple of weeks at least. So until then, I'll be enjoying Sheila's. By the time you're ready to be intimate with me again, I'll have learned a lot about how to make you enjoy it." As I gently guided Sheila's head downward and she took my soft cock into her mouth, Lori watched us with a heavy heart. "And then, it'll just be, you and me, Todd?" she asked softly. I nodded. "As long as you promise never to pull another stunt like this one, no pun intended." She shuddered, whether from the memory of Martin or from watching my arousal in Sheila's mouth, I couldn't tell. "Never, Todd, never again. I've learned my lesson, believe me." "All right then," I said, withdrawing from Sheila's mouth and positioning her on her hands and knees. After thoroughly lubricating myself and her, I eased into her tight, warm asshole, and we both sighed with pleasure. Gradually, following Sheila's guidance, I established a steady rhythm. To my surprise, I noticed Lori still sitting there, looking deeply unhappy. Baby, I know I deserve this, but I can't help but feel, how can you just sleep with another woman like this? Smiling, I replied, actually, Lori, it's just like riding a bike, you never forget how. Write your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a great day.